I gotta say to you now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another show of
One.
Oh, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we have something that I need to tell you. This isn't a dream come true. This is a fantasy come true, as the words of Tony over here. I've got the man who sings Christmas carols during March. He is one of the most nicest people that have ever played Survivor, arguably, in my opinion anyway. Welcome, Speaker Mike.
Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. I also appreciate you bringing up the Christmas carols thing. I kind of forgot about that. And the second you said Christmas, I was like, oh no, it's happening. They remember.
some things, it can't get clear. Anyway, Mike, we are super excited to have you on our shows. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm just quickly gonna run through our episode quickly. We award a golden spear to the person who made the best move, did the coolest thing on this episode. Then we award a wooden spoon for the person who did the dumbest thing. We call him the village idiot, the island idiot, I don't know, whatever. The person who did the stupidest thing, we award the wooden spoon. So I'm going to ask your nominations for that. And then lastly, we chat about the storm is brewing. It's about what to come and what we would have done if we were on the island. And we're going to ask you what you would have done. Any case, without any further ado,
Before you jump in, I just want to say, there's one thing that has been announced today, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, is that Survivor Season 8, South African season that is, has been postponed until further notice, just in case you guys didn't know, or did you know?
No, man. Sucks. It's bad.
I had a bit of a feeling, yeah. I think it was pretty clear and obvious because I was kind of hoping we'd hear news about a domestic season. I was hoping that we'd get a Survivor SA Wild Coast or perhaps Cozy Bay. I think that'd be really cool if they were able to do that because I think we've got the resources here to do it. So I kind of was hoping that'd happen. But I also understand that there's, the whole Survivor production is quite a hefty one. And to take people and put them on a stranded beach without anything, knowing that COVID-19 exists, is like a bit of psychological damage to a person beyond the obvious physiological dangers of it.
Yeah, and I suppose they don't know what's, like, if you were to play right now, you wouldn't know what's happening to your family because you're completely out of touch with society. So that's an interesting point as well.
Have you seen the Big Brother the Big Brother castaways? Well, not castaways, like contestants. They're playing like Big Brother Germany and Big Brother Canada, and they've been in the Big Brother house during COVID-19's existence. And there's like footage of them being informed about the nature of this incredible disease that's spreading throughout the globe. And I think that must be so traumatic because I was convinced that there was like a zombie apocalypse when I was on the island. I was like, what's happening in the world? Because you basically are, you have no idea what's going on. Nobody will tell you what day of the week it is. You don't know, like you lose track of time and space. So I can't imagine what it's like knowing that there's COVID-19 in existence and you are locked inside the Big Brother house. That must be crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, Claudio, can I ask your nomination for the Golden Spear before we COVID-19 takes over our conversation as well? Anyway.
Well, it is spreading everywhere, Clovis. So we are in danger of that. Anyway, no, okay. So I'm going to start off with your man, Clovis, Mr. Tony. I think Tony deserves to be given this award for so many reasons. Number one, he pretty much gets. Wait, let me start from the top. He wins immunity and 2 fire tokens. He then gets the vote to go the way he wants to. And then he also manages to save face with Sarah by telling her, they were gunning her and, I've got your back, So, I think he did really well from this perspective. I don't know what you guys think.
100%, Claudia, I agree. And also, Tony, he made this episode for me when he met his wife and kids, and he said, it's a fantasy country. That was very special and put it into perspective beautifully. But also, who I must nominate for Golden Spear, Claudio, is Sarah for playing her Steeler vote correctly. I feel that was spot on. That was utilized perfectly, and we were very skeptical about it initially, whether it was worth it going risking it for the Steeler vote. Anyway, Mike, what's your feeling or your nomination for Golden Spear?
I think there's one stone cold killer this season, and that's Sophie. I think Sophie's been unbelievable. I love Jeremy. He's been so great, but Sophie's been she's been next level. I think it's a shame we haven't seen Sophie play a second season before this, because I think we'd actually regard her as a far better player than we did going into it. I think she was kind of underrated. South Pacific was a particularly tough season to watch as a Survivor fan, but seeing the way that Sophie has run this game, she's been clinical, she's been effective, and she's been really attuned to every facet of the game. She's quite good at the challenges, which is one element. She's obviously really, really smart, and she's got a great read on the way people interact with each other, and her social skills are incredible. So I think what we saw on the last episode was her drawing a line in the sand when she mentioned that the 5 in the alliance should move away from the rest to chat. That's a really ballsy move to make.
It's risky.
Because it is risky. Yeah, it is. There's a lot of time left in this game, and you know that when you are saying that, you are very clearly marking your you're making your intentions very clear. So I think Sophie, for being really brave and for being so effective, is the player of the season in my mind this far.
I think our other background would have been very appropriate now. Just the way you've described Sophie, we had her as a general in the army, and she was clinical and all those things you described it actually spot on, Mike. But also, I wanna just make 2 tiny Golden Spear nominations. If we had 2 tiny Golden Spears, I would have loved to give one to Tyson's daughter, and and the other one to Ben's daughter. They were so cute, man. It was just they stole my heart in this episode. They were
it's a secret scene.
Little girls.
There's a secret scene online right now of the big family visit. And I always implore fans to go watch secret scenes, because it counts for me as canon. You should be watching secret scenes as a fan. You've got access to the internet. Go watch secret scenes. It adds lots of context to the season. Edits are difficult to get right, and secret scenes are very important. And in the secret scene, there's a moment where Jeremy's son begins to wink at the camera, right?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. And it's the most incredible thing in the world, because he looks kind of like Val. He looks a bit like Jeremy as well. I think it's alluding in my mind to what's to come in the future of Survivor, where it doesn't need to have an end date. This can be like sports, and it can be broadcast every single year indefinitely. And people like Jeremy's son or Jeremy's daughter one day might play in a season of Survivor, which is very exciting.
I think Jeff has already put that out there. He's scouted. He knows who he wants already for the casting. But on that note, with regards going back to Sophie, Kobus, you mentioned Sarah playing that Steeler vote advantage. I'm convinced she only plays that advantage because Sophie tells her to, number one. And then number two, going back to the other thing, is that if we're going to look at this ballsy move in which she does, we go back to the secret scene where Kim already identifies her as a target. So Kim knows exactly what's going on with Sophie in her game. And I think right now she's moved out of the category of what Tony would call a hyena. And we all know she's a lion right now. And if she had played another season, like you were saying, she would be identified as a lion right now. And I think now she's really drawn that line in the sand. She's got 2 votes to her name now, so she knows people are coming after her. So it's going to be interesting to see how she navigates her way forward after this.
Yeah, I must say it's going to be a tough one to actually award the Golden Spear, because I think all the candidates that's been put forward is there are strong cases to be made out, and I think have been made out for all 3. So it's really going to be a toughie to award the Golden Spear in this episode. What do you guys think?
I have an honorable mention that I'd like to suggest in Jeremy, because I think Jeremy was dealt a pretty raw hand going into the episode. I think he's running out of numbers. It's quite clear that he's on the outs, and I would say it's very unlikely from this point he can win because of where he's sitting right now. He's in a really, really tough spot, and people know the kind of game he plays. And I think it was quite strange hearing him being singled out last episode because it worked so well previously that he was such an ambiguous character. He's very, very hard to read. It's hard to know what he's going for. It's hard to know what he's like honestly feeling. And it was noticed by Tony, and it was articulated by Tony. And I think that while Jeremy is in a really bad position right now, he handled the situation superbly as he decided to leave Tribal Council, and is now still in the game. So he's got a fighting chance. I think had he stayed, he might have been in some hot water when the chips ultimately fell. So I think he made a really good move there.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, sorry, Claudio, go for it.
No. So what are you gonna say?
Okay, so I think Jeremy was on the verge for me to either nominate him for Golden Spear or Wooden Spoon, because he went into Tribal Council saying like a firefighter doesn't drop his crew, and then he basically went into the burning building and he started like putting out the fire, but then decided to kick a pillar down and then just run out, and the whole building collapsed onto all his whole fire brigade.
Yeah, it was almost like Sarah had the match, and he was watching her, and he was waiting. They were waiting to see. Oh, wait, is she gonna light the fire? Light the fire. Wait, the match is about to go. You know what? Before you light that fire, I'm bouncing.
So no, that was a cool standoff to see in Tribal Council. And Mike, you've been through a couple of fiery Tribal Councils as well. With Doc. So did that bring back some memories?
You know what? The first day I went to Tribal Council, this wasn't shown in the edit of Survivor SA Island of Secrets, but what I was like blown away that I was there. I was like smiling. I was like, and the first question Nico asked me was, Mark, why are you smiling? This is a bad place. I was like, this is just, if I go, I go. Like, I don't care. This is rad. I'm a Tribal Council. It looks cool. Tribal Council is a weirdly enhanced experience. It's the one time in Survivor you aren't feeling hungry or you're not feeling cold. You seem to really be connecting on a human level there. And I think what we saw that was beautiful as fans of the game, I saw some complaints online, and this is something I think is really important. I saw some complaints online that Jeff should have insisted upon the fact that they voted when he said it's time to vote. And there was a kind of a back and forth between Sarah and Jeremy. I don't for 1 second agree with that. I think that Jeff was perfect in the way he dealt with it, because ultimately the production's not there for the viewers really. The viewers appreciate the unfolding of a social experiment. And I think the duty of Survivor is to provide the castaways with the best possible opportunity to play the best game they possibly can play, because that is what leads to a good win. And that's what we all want from the season. So in that moment, Jeff sees that there's some shenanigans going on. There's a bit of game going on as Jeremy waits for Sarah to play, as Sarah waits for Jeremy to play. And I think that whilst the frustration of that is that it turns out badly for, the rest of Jeremy's alliance, it certainly was the ultimate way to allow the natural rules of the game to be tested out by Jeremy and by Sarah. So I think that was a great moment of television. And I think it's something that is a good indication of why Survivor is so successful, because it does not intervene. I don't think there's many reality shows that have as little intervention as Survivor does. And I think that's a really important beat to make. I mean, if you compare, if you draw a line to its counterparts, The Amazing Race. The Amazing Race is such an amazing show because when the crew know that contestants are going to the wrong place, they will fly there knowing that it's a mistake. So, for example, if I now got to fly to Greenland, but the people I'm filming are making a mistake and are flying to England, I must get on a plane, go to England, not tell them, and then wait for them to make the right connections and then go to Iceland. So it's really important that the show and the production allows these players to make the mistakes and make the decisions which lead to good wins and good losses.
But are you saying that Jeff should get the Golden Spear, Mike?
I think that's perfectly reasonable in my mind. People love hating on Jeff Probst. Jeff Probst, take me now. You're incredible.
and Jeff got a hug at the end of the episode as well. So possibly. And let's not forget Fiji Airlines, guys. I mean, they made all this shit happen. But going back to the whole Jeremy connection and letting game unfold and all of that. And it's super interesting in the sense that you've got Jeremy who makes us and I mean, this is why he's on the periphery as to whether or not he should get Golden Spear or Wooden Spoon. Is because, you guys are right. Like, he leaves because he's allowed to do that. But at the same time, then I'm like, shit, well, he's completely screwed his teammates over. He's already isolated. Now, next episode, who's he going to work with, right? But at the same time, if you see the reaction to everyone's behavior and that sort of thing, you can see they panicked. So it kind of made self-assurance that he was the one that was probably going to get the votes.
I don't know Jeremy as a person, obviously. That's very clear. I've never, like, he doesn't know I exist. But when I see Jeremy, I feel like I know him because he reminds me very much of Rob. Rob Bentley and Jeremy are the same person in my mind. They have such similar character traits. They're so appealing. They're so hard to read. And that's why they're such naturally successful Survivor players. I think you could put those two players in any season ever and they would do very well. I think Rob Bentley could go play in Winners at War right now and have a very successful run. And I think it's just because it's his personality. He's hard to read and they are so affable and likable. And I think what Jeremy knows, without stating it, is that he is really good at endearing himself to people. So whilst right now his numbers are down, he knows he's got the metal socially to blend in once more and to tie himself to someone who will protect him. And that's what we saw him do so well in Second Chances. He made the mistake in San Juan del Sur, and I believe he learned that lesson there. And I think that we are going to see Jeremy find a way to endear himself to someone. And that was actually hinted at in the next time on Survivor when him and Tony were chatting. That's Jeremy's social game coming to the fore. The fact that he's even having a conversation with Tony, who led this assault against his allies, is incredible. And it's testament to Jeremy's unbelievably skilled social game.
Yeah, but also Tony looks like he's going to try and pull the wool over his eyes, though. But I don't know. What are you going to say there, Quibus?
No, I'm just saying it's definitely a hard episode to award a Golden Spear. But I think given the amount of time and also like just the moving scenes that we saw with everyone's families and the fact that they got to spend like the whole episode with their families or the whole day with their families and the whole all of the castaways got it. I think we have to award it to Jeff. I think I'm going to go with Mike's suggestion. Are you with me, Claudio?
To Jeff, props. I think, like Mike says, he gets a lot of hate. So maybe this is the one to show that, we're on board. We're on side with the things that are happening. I don't know. Mike, you agree?
Oh yeah, Jeff, you have everything. Take it all and run with it. I love you. If you ever realize this, I love you so much.
All right, cool. Let's throw it. Take it, man. Let's do it. Congratulations, Jeff, for winning our Golden Spear.
Alrighty, and now Wooden Spoon. So, like I've mentioned in the beginning, Wooden Spoon gets awarded to the village idiot, island idiot, person who did the stupidest thing, and Claudio. Who are your nominations for?
Why are you throwing the bone to me every time? I wanted to see what other people are saying first, man.
Okay, let's ask Mike. Mike, your Wooden Spoon nomination. Who's it going to?
I think, it's easy to say that it was hard to make a call about a Golden Spear. I think a Wooden Spoon's even harder to make a call on because I think that these players are they show why they are winners. I don't think anyone's playing a stupid game at all at this point. Even the dumbest move of the season being Sandra's, decision to give Denise an idol. That was a great move. Had it worked out in her favor, it would have been considered an iconic move and would have further etched her legacy as the greatest of all time. I don't think there's anyone who's an obvious candidate for a Wooden Spoon. As you mentioned, yes, Jeremy might have made a bad decision in abandoning his allies, but he ultimately removed himself from being in danger. And I read that it was a win-lose situation, and Jeremy won. He's safe. He's still in the game. As much as his allies are out right now, I don't think he was like the most tied person in the world to Tyson either. I don't think it was like the strongest alliance ever. So I don't think he lost as badly. I don't think the loss element outweighs the win element. Also, the person to consider is Kim, because I think the fact that she played the idol for Denise was difficult for us to make sense of, because it was obvious that they were using Denise as a decoy to us as the viewers. We thought, okay, they're stealing Denise's vote, so they want Kim to play the idol for Denise. So it was frustrating when Kim said, I'm playing it for Denise, because I think to us as viewers, it was obvious that it wasn't going to be Denise. That was just a decoy. In saying that, though, we aren't sure about the kind of plan that was fed to Kim. And I don't think Kim is a stupid player in any way, shape, or form. So if Kim says, Denise, I'm playing this for you, it's for good reason in my mind, because Kim is an absolute genius. So I don't think there's this like really dominant, obvious wooden spoon, but I would look towards people who are in that alliance, that alliance of five, who clearly know that Tyson and Kim and Jeremy are on the outs. They know that. They know that like Tyson's been voted out, so his legacy is stained in some way. What are you doing working with Tony? Because like Tony is Tony. I'm so happy. Thank you for working with Tony. He's great. But I feel like if I'm playing against Tony, I probably, besides being attracted to how funny he is, would want him out of the game. So what are you doing deciding to side with Tony and ultimately eliminating any chance of him being removed before final 6 probably?
Yeah, I think the thing is, and actually Russell Hans said in one of his videos that in his books, I know, there are a lot of people who's going to criticize Russell Hans and, who is he and all that.
I love Russell. Russell is my favorite player ever. Rick Devens and Russell Hans and Jeremy.
Yeah, but Russell,
that's someone we want to get onto our show next, by the way. So if you know Rick Devens, give him a shot, because that's who I'm gunning. I've already made like a little thumbnail for him. Anyway, continue, Cobus.
But Russell Hans said actually that in his book, Tony is one of the best Survivor players ever in his book. And he said that if he can put his money on someone to win, he actually thinks Tony. But anyway, so apart from Tony, what I just wanted to mention quickly, Mike, I wanted to pull you in. With regards to our wooden spoon nomination, I felt Jeremy made a mistake when he went to Tony and said, Sarah and Sophie are too tight. We should break that up. Should the approach not have been, if you were Jeremy, Mike, would you not rather have said, went about it by saying, Tony, don't you think Sarah and Sophie can be a threat because they're too tight? Instead of suggesting that you're voting them out, you sort of like alluding to it and getting him to suggest it. What would your take on that situation have been?
I think you are absolutely right in saying that you should rather suggest it in a more gentle way. But in saying that, I also know that Jeremy is someone who's quite direct. And I think that that's what makes him effective, is that there's no bullshit attached to Jeremy's game at all. So we as viewers have been groomed to understand that cops are us is a thing. Whereas I mean, if I'm Jeremy, I'm thinking there was a betrayal at Kagiyan. There was a second betrayal at Game Changers. Okay, well, not really, but there was a betrayal there. I mean, there's definite like historical tension between these two people. So let me try and exploit that right now and present Tony with an opportunity to perhaps ask these two. Yes, I do agree with you. It was a strange decision to go straight to Tony, because to us as viewers, it seems completely obvious that there's a very strong alliance between Sophie and Tony. But again, perhaps Tony was complaining about Sophie, because we did see some tension between them in this episode. It began to creep in. So maybe Tony was saying to, and these maybes are so useless right now, because anything could have been said to anyone. But I imagine that Jeremy would have been reading some sort of social cue, would have picked up on by using that as a tactic. And I agree with you. I mean, if we're to believe that exactly what we're shown is what happened on the island, then I think Jeremy made a pretty bad move on that front.
Okay.
Yeah, but at the same time though, sorry, Cobus, at the same time, you're thinking about it, you're like, well, coming into what we've seen, he's working, allegedly it's meant to be Ben, it's meant to be Tony, Jeremy, and Tyson working together, because remember the whole line. So I think from that perspective, he thinks like he's pretty close with Tony, because Tony's pushing that narrative. Lions, hey, that's right. So from that perspective, he's like, well, let me talk to my fellow lion. But it was that moment when Kim pulls him over and like gives a little nudge, and Tony picks up on that immediately and says, "Oh, no. Not that. I mean, Tony's trying to call the game. That's what he's trying to do. All these, and this is the point we keep touching on every episode of Winners at War, and this is why it's so great, as opposed to what happened, say, in season 7, Survivor South Africa, where you had only a few people trying to play the game. In this scenario, you've got people that think they're winners, they know they're winners, they're all going to take control, and they're not comfortable, apart from someone like Michelle, who's comfortable being in the background. Everyone kind of wants to be at the forefront to making the decision. So that's a pretty interesting thing. But if I've got to go back to the wooden spoon though, and saying what you were saying, Mike, in terms of regardless of whoever we give this episode, it's going to be very harsh because based on all the facts that you mentioned. But if we are going to really, really nitpick, I think someone like Kim, that you've already spoken about, the idol play, she almost gave herself like a 50-50 chance. It's almost like the advantage that Michelle has flipped the advantage sort of thing, where she tried to guess something. I think the moment Jeremy leaves, I think that's where she's got to go into self-preservation mode and just say, let me keep this idol. Let me save it for another day because I'm not going to win this battle. So I think from that perspective, if I've got to be really critical, that's why I would say Kim. I don't know, Clovis, what do you say?
I think that's also a very valid nomination, Claudio, because at the end of the day, Kim played her idol without any effect. She played it for Denise, which was, it's very self-sacrificial. And all that. I mean, and like you say, she stood there in front of the voting podium and sort of like made up her mind, gave it a chance instead of like really playing it from a strategic point of view to have an impact from that angle. So I agree with Kim for Wooden Spoon. Like I said, Jeremy was 50-50 for me. He did good things and he did stupid things, and he abandoned his alliance, but he saved himself. Kim just sacrificed her idol 100%. I think, you said, she should have just kept it. So I'm leaning towards Kim for Wooden Spoon for this episode.
There's one more person. I don't know, because I don't think she deserves it because she had to make a call in that situation. It just went the wrong way. So that's why I'm saying we can point it her way. But I think someone who was completely left out of the vote, but some way managed to be part of the group. Oh, another reason, sorry, to go back to Kim, if we're going to forget the idol play, because the idol play is a bit harsh, but where we can say she makes a mistake is she assumes that Michelle's with the crew. And I think that gives her that false sense of security where she's got the numbers to go to battle. Whereas Michelle, it turns out, if you guys look at the votes on YouTube, Michelle ended up voting Tyson. So I don't know how she got word. I don't know how she was included in that. But the votes were split 5-2-2. And Michelle was part of that. So the assumption of including Michelle in her group was probably where you could say, okay, she made the real mistake.
Okay, so here's where the wooden spoon comes in. We gave Jeff Probst the golden spear. I think that the editors should be given the wooden spoon this week because you mentioned the Michelle problem. It is so valid. What you're saying right now is so valid. Where did Michelle's allegiance to this alliance of five come from? We weren't given any indication of that. We don't know why the votes panned out the way that they did. So I think the only obvious conclusion there is that the editing for the first time this season in a really tangible, identifiable way has been poor. Like it was not well edited. I don't like being, I mean, yeah, sometimes it's a nice, kick when someone gets blindsided, and I'm blindsided too. But I felt like this time I just was like, but why did Michelle vote with them? It didn't make sense to me. There was no historical talk of alliances between Michelle and this oscillating group. I kind of felt like maybe Kim would have played the idol for Tyson because it's an obvious one in my mind. So we weren't given the important elements and pieces of information before the time because they wanted to produce a shock in us. Yeah. And I think that for that reason, I think that I can't say that from what I've seen, anyone's been really no one's been village idiots-ish, but I think the editors this episode for the first time really this season have made a complete confusing decision to air things the way that they have, and I've got no idea what happened at the end, and that's why I would give them the wooden spoon this week.
Mike, I think, we as South Africans are just very privileged and spoiled with superb production quality with regards to Survivor. So we are super critical if the production isn't up to our standards.
No, but that's exactly a valid point. And they've done this often. And they keep trying to keep everything, make it seem like it's blindside. Everything's elusive, and they do leave out the important facts. And that's where the guys with our people, that's where they do it so well. The storytelling, we know exactly what's going on at every moment in time. So, damn it, Mike, you nailed it, man. I think I agree with you.
Yes, man.
And before we become too pretentious, we acknowledge that Survivor SA Maldives happened. We acknowledge that they were wearing prison outfits. Yes, that was like redacted. That was before. That was BA before Afrikaans. Like
I'm talking. I'm talking. You know how you got the different prehistoric dates in Survivor America. We've also got them in South Africa. And I think from season 67, that's when the new age kicks in.
Season 5 is good. We can say that Graham and Co were fantastic. We can also say that like Ashley Hayden was one of the best of all time. But if we're going back to like early days where our poor friend was voted out because he went to exile because he didn't like get to the beach in time, and there was like a fake initial tribe for one vote, and then poor Felicity Regan got taken out, and oh my goodness, we had a bad start.
yeah.
Any case, Claudio, shall we award the wooden spoon? Mike doesn't know what to do yet, but
all right. So Mike, you're gonna call it. We're just gonna make the noise. We're gonna make the noise. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. Quack, quack, quack.
This week's wooden spoon goes to production. Editors, Survivor editors. Editors get it.
All right, there we go. That's it. Goes.
So now we have come to the section which we call the Storm is Brewing. It is where we speculate on what's to come and what moves we would have made if we were on the island. And seeing as we have some experience here with us, we'll be posing a couple of questions to Mike. So currently what we saw in this episode, or the last part during Tribal Council, was when Sophie went and called up the core 5 of the alliance. I mean, it was her, Sarah, Tony, Ben, and who was the 5th person? Nick. Yeah, Nick actually. And Claudio, what was interesting for me to see was all of a sudden we've got a mixed bag of lions and hyenas who seems to be running the show now, and that just threw everything on its head. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed this season so much, is because you don't know what to expect. Things shift at lightning speed. And what I quickly want to ask you, Mike, now is if you are now in the bottom alliance, if you're now aligned with Jeremy, Kim, and Michelle, where do you start? What is what groundwork do you do before your next tribal council?
Well, it's clear that Michelle voted with that majority, but she was not included in the words Sophie said. Sophie said we should separate us. Shouldn't us 5 just get up and go away? That's what you said, right? Something along those lines. So Michelle was not included. So that's your starting point, because clearly Michelle would feel slightly unnerved by that, even if it was part of a plan. No doubt about it. Winners at War. You've made it to merge. You're deep into the game. You're close to $2 million. You've played really well so far. You've improved your legacy. You want to be included. You want to know what's going on. So I would start there tentatively. I would just kind of ask a few questions. And I think Michelle will then have an entry point into that big core alliance because someone communicated with her. And so I think that's the first person you consult. Additionally, we know that Tony's someone who in Kagiyan played relatively... he was kind of like slow in the beginning. He was exciting, but certainly once merge happened, he became the Tony we all know and love. And I think that Tony will be tentative to... he'll be reluctant to allow one person to become too dominant. So if you can perhaps stoke Tony's ego, and you can begin to point to how dangerous Sophie is, because she is. And she's really like sassy about it. She's cool. Like she's a great character now. She's evolved into this really dominant Godfather-esque type figure. And I love what she's doing, but that's where I would head for. I'd be like, here's a really dangerous person. Because if we to consider someone like Nick, I think Nick is actually playing a really great under the radar game. He's done very little to offend anyone beyond being like kind of, what's going on? What's going on? You know, he's been a bit like creepy, but beyond that, there's not too much like, you know, bad
creepier than sniffing his girlfriend's hair when she came on. Did you pick that up? She's like, oh, his fiance. Oh,
yeah, first aid experience, I must say, after smelling Survivor Castaways for 35 days, my dad smelled like the best smelling man in the universe. I was like, soap! That's soap! Can we have an immunity for soap? I'll die for that. Give me any of that right now. So I get that. And also, it was so nice to see them. So nice to see them together. Like this young couple who we kind of heard about in David vs. Goliath. Now we see them engaged, and we see her there celebrating his success and winners at war. So that was great. But yeah, I think that would be where I'd begin. I think I'd start with either Michelle or I'd start with Tony, and that would give me the best possible chance at lifting myself up. And also the best thing to do there is to be aware of the fact that you don't want to lose who you have left. So Denise and Kim and Jeremy will do really well to stick together if they can, because once one of those three are voted out, it leads to a really dominant minority, and then it becomes a pagonging.
Yeah.
Claudio, tell me.
Yeah, so
I just wanted to ask you quickly, Claudio. Was your heart torn in two when you saw your two crushes at Tribal Council basically going opposite to one another, Sophie and Michelle?
No, I think I know who's going to win this battle. I think, like, based on exactly what we've seen so far, it's no secret that Sophie's running the show. They're all going to be aware of this, and I think they're still going to start making the moves. I think it's going to be very key as to what Sarah does next as to whether or not Sophie's going to be involved. But going back to your question in terms of what you asked Mike, and I wrote it down so I didn't forget, just in case you guys see. I'll see that. But my thing was, you do something similar to what a Luke Toki and a David did when they were there's a tribe swap and they were completely out in the numbers. What they did was they played to their strength. And this is what Mike has mentioned earlier in terms of what Jeremy does really well. So this is probably why he'll be safe in the coming votes, is that you play on your social skill to be able to see who's not getting along with you. So, for example, you see Jeremy now, he's got the strength, he's working with Tony, but at the same time now, if he can pick up between Sarah and Tony, that they do have like this weird sibling rival discussion. So there's something there to work. So you get people on your side by turning them against each other. So that's one way when you're at the bottom to flip your numbers or flip the numbers in your advantage. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that Michelle, sure, she seems on the outs and she's going to be very uncomfortable with being left out. She even posted, and I know Mike follows people on social media, so she's even posted something with like a little image with her and Sophie shivering, going, "Oh, this is how I felt after Sophie left me out of the vote." But I think her alliance with the Nick, again, also under the radar, but Nai's managed to claw himself into the general 5-group alliance there. She's working closely with him. So those are two sleeper agents. And I've got a funny feeling that the two of them are going to go all the way to the end with someone else. That's my personal opinion.
I think it's an important point you've brought up, is playing to your strengths and using your social skills. It must also be said that sometimes in Survivor, things just don't work out for you. Sometimes it's beyond your control. So if we look at a good example, you drew an example of Luke Toki and of David. And I think we can look back to Australian Survivor once more, is when Michelle was tribe swapped on her own. And she had no one with her. Yeah. And she was told an important piece of information about a super idol from one of the dominant alliance members. She took that information and stored it internally. And 2 days later, Tribal Council, she brought it up to the tribe. And she was like, "This guy's outing your information to the stranger. I want to work with you." And that man went home that night. That exact same recipe was tried once more by, it was in David vs. Goliath. Is it Elizabeth was her name, with the cowboy hat? You used to wear the cowboy hat?
Yep. It was Elizabeth.
Eh?
Yeah.
Elizabeth. So she did exactly the same thing, where she learned what Angelina was planning and she waited until Tribal Council to bring it up. She followed the exact same model that Michelle followed in Australian Survivor, and that ruined the game for her. So she was voted out that night. So, you can try a huge combination of things, but sometimes the situation is really lost. And I, in my opinion, the only way we could see a really intense destruction of that big alliance that's sort of formed in Winners at War is if Sophie's taken out. Someone isn't happy with how dominant Sophie's been, and someone then decides to blindside her because she's been she's such a dominant figure right now.
She's a clear winner at the moment, yeah.
And if we're to consider editing as well, I think that in my mind, I'm beginning to believe that Sophie's a decoy winner at this point.
Okay, so now, my next question would be, if you're in Sophie's position, do you think you ever realize that I'm now at the point where I'm being perceived as a big threat, as someone who can win this season? Maybe I should tone it down. Maybe I should chat to my alliance and tell them, listen, guys, let's go under the radar a bit. Claudio, what is your take on that? On going under the radar when you do you think you ever will experience being a big threat, or do you sort of like get into emotion where you just roll, you just do what you do, and then next moment you set yourself up for a blind side? What is your feeling?
Well, if you Boston Rob, you don't change and you get voted out. I think Sophie's got the EQ to know that, listen, there's a time and a place. She's put her name's been mentioned now, so she might pull a Jacques and disappear for an episode or two if she can. That would be the smart thing to do. And also, like, when you're having conversations with people, and Mike did this really well when he played, is that
stop it, I like it.
you don't want to be dictating the conversation all the time. You want to subtly, or maybe Rob actually, because he did win the season, but you want to subtly suggest what people want to do and make them think it's their idea. And I think Sophie does that really well. So she will be able to retract and make people have the opinion that they are making the decisions. And I think it's something Sarah said about working with Tony, is that, you know, there was no give and take there. It was just both of them wanting to take, and eventually Tony get, why are you getting irritated? Why are you getting irritated? And anyone knows in any conversation, as soon as that starts happening, you're in big trouble, because that relationship's not going to move forward. So that's one of the things. Yeah, I don't know, Mike, what do you think?
I think to negate the threat level right now would be quite difficult to do. Sometimes you actually have to just write it out, because if Sophie is going to just like go into her shell after being as dominant as she was, I think it speaks to a bit of a disingenuous character. And my immediate thought goes to Liz from Samoa. And she was very quiet and very reserved, and she clearly was trying to negate her threat level. But it was clear and obvious that she was a strategic threat. She was very smart. So I think sometimes that's even more dangerous, especially for someone like Sophie, who is quite obviously this like really attuned player. And maybe we're getting it more than the Costo is getting it at this point. But she seems like she's very obviously a strong threat. So I think if she's to suddenly just like withdraw and go into her shell, I think that's even more dangerous for her. I think what she can do now is she's got the momentum. She's made the moves. She's put herself out there. In her saying in the last episode, let's go talk on our own, she knew what the implication was of that. And people were thinking about it, but no one was going to say it. And she was like, I'm going to commit to this. Let's do it right now. So she's put the target on her own back, and she's got the social skill and the technical know-how to make a success of writing this out. She can, for the next little while, make sure that she's running an alliance in the same way that Sandra in Game Changers, yes, it turned out badly for her, but we saw that she had the social chops to really lead an alliance. Sophie, I believe, for the next little while can lead this alliance and should lead this alliance, because I think trying anything else will come off as completely disingenuous and will put her in even more danger. So I wouldn't change too much. I know that you mentioned Boston Rob as an example. Yes, we know the buddy system in that instance was a bit embarrassing in the last episode, but ultimately Boston Rob, I think when we consider I'm a huge Boston Rob fan, because I think going in with the target he had and playing as well as he did is remarkable. And I think he had no real other option at that point in the game. That's the way the chips had fallen. I think Sophie's gotten herself into this scenario, and the best thing she can do now is hone that, and she can continue leading the lines for the next 2 or 3 votes, perhaps allowing someone else to speak a bit more dominantly. But she's put the target there. She can't you can't just erase it in a moment of silence for breakfast. It's not going to go away.
You've got the juries. Sorry, Cubs. You got the jury as well that are just, they saw her make that move, and they're like, damn. Well, we know who's calling the shots here. So she's already got that vote regardless. So that's I don't know how she's going to survive this. Sorry, Cubs.
No, I just wanted to mention Sophie asking her boyfriend whether she looks like a supermodel on the island. Did you guys get that? That's quite funny. Claudio, what is your feeling? What's to come? What do you think with regards to the challenge weekend? The challenges coming up. What are we going to see? Who do you think will perform well in the challenges? And basically, who do you think's gonna get the boot next time? Is your feeling that the next challenge will be a diverse one in the sense that it's gonna test not only endurance but concentration and maybe a bit of a puzzle as well? And will that sort of like, does that give you a feeling of who's gonna win immunity and who's gonna get the boot? What is your feeling with regard to that?
I personally, like, when I'm watching Survivor, and I think, and this goes back to the early days of Survivor, we know there's a lot of emphasis placed on guys that are really strong at challenges, right? And those are, in the past, those are the guys that tend to make it to the end, and they're the ones that get the votes for playing that sort of game. Now, when I watch it, that's probably the last thing I see is the challenge as to who's going to do well, who isn't going to do well. And I start working around with the dynamic and start seeing everything. I mean, a lot of emphasis was placed on Tony now. We know that Tony's, it's interesting because in the secret scene, he does mention that the reason he's gotten this far is because he took the advice of his baby cakes for his wife, saying, listen, his baby cakes. I love that, by the way. And he said it like 10 times.
I haven't been running around the jungle acting crazy.
No?
Nope. And I did exactly what you told me. I'm in house arrest right now.
You really changed.
Yeah. I'm 180, man. And that's why I'm still here. Baby Cakes told me before I left, she said, Tony, please try not to be crazy. Please don't run around looking for idols. Please try to be yourself. Let people get to know you for who you are. Because I'm not threatening when you see who I am as a person. That's why I'm still here, because Baby Cakes advice.
My baby cakes told me just to be normal and be myself, show my true self.
So I love how he was calling her man. Like, he was like crying. He was like, ooh, and he was like, it's so good to see you, man. I was like, why are you calling you, like, you're weeping and you're still calling her man? Oh, Tony
but his voice had changed as well. The pitch had gone up. So it's like, I think you're a man. I love you. And it's like,
it was just such an arrival, though. Because, like, the first time he played, he didn't get to see his wife because she was pregnant with the baby. And that was, like, probably the highlight of my Survivor viewing career. I'm lying. It wasn't really, but it was fantastic. It was right up there.
I don't know. I thought Jeremy's moment when he was like, let's go. And then the troops came running around the corner. I felt like that was on point. That's the one moment that got me. All the others were like, yeah. And then he was just like, let's go. And all of them came flying. I was like, that's a team. That's how you raise a family. Anyway, side note. Where was I now? I completely forgot. Oh, going back to Tony. So he says, show his true character, be himself. Don't be a bit crazy and eccentric. And that's why he's gotten this far. And I think in this next episode, we see him going like back to his old shenanigans. So as to who's going to be a target, if he doesn't get this right, I think he's probably going to go. I don't know.
What's your feeling, Mike?
I don't think Tony's going anytime soon. I don't think Tony's going. I think Tony is in for the long run. It excites me to say so much. I just want him to win so badly. But I think it's clear and obvious to me that Kim's going to be going soon. I don't think Kim has much of a stay left in the game. And that's also tied to the edit this far. I think that Kim has been kind of undersold. And if she were going to be a dominant force later on in the game, I think we'd have seen more of her arc. She certainly has had some arc. She was sort of despised early on and has integrated herself fairly decently. But ultimately, she's just had too many close calls already. And it feels like she doesn't have too much left in the game. There's not much for her to do. It's not like One World where she had many options left. I don't think she does really. I think she's spoken about options. I don't think those options are true. And it freaks me out to say it, but I think Kim is in huge trouble. And then I'm going to highlight Sophie. And it's a bit problematic for me to mention Sophie because if I'm reading the way that it's been presented to me thus far, I should have no concerns about her well-being in the game. But I also know that she has definitely been given the figure of Godfather at this point, and it's deserved. She's been so badass. But for her to counter that under the circumstances of Winners at War, where any one of the 9 players left, or was it 9, 8 left, any one of them could turn on her in an instant and there'll be readily available followers. Yeah. I think obviously Sarah is very close to her, but I don't think there's anyone who's like that committed to her that it's impossible to imagine her being blindsided. So I'm of the opinion that Sophie and Kim are in grave danger, and I'd put Jeremy there as well. Jeremy also doesn't have many options left in the game. I think it's fairly inevitable that soon he'll be in trouble.
Okay, so we're saying people like Nick and Ben are rather safe for the next tribal council at least. Then also, I just quickly want to touch on Edge of Extinction. What do you think? Who's got the best chance of coming back into the game? What are the odds of Tyson making it back once again onto the island? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's almost. I don't see Tyson coming back. I think it's. I would like him to, but I don't think he will. I don't see it happening. And I think his return was actually very anticlimactic. I think that the fact that he won was kind of sucky. I mean, I love Tyson. He's my winner pick at the start. But I think that because Tyson didn't have an idol, he didn't have much of a chance really. I think had Nat or Rob come back into the game with idols, it would have been far better for the Edge of Extinction returnees. I'll never ever count Boston Rob out because I think Boston Rob is an absolute beast and I'd love to see him there. I think a lot depends on what challenges used to re-enter the game. So we saw that they repeated the first Edge of Extinction challenge from the original Edge of Extinction season. And I wonder if perhaps they're using they're using it as almost like a placeholder that in every Edge of Extinction season, they might evoke that challenge again. Because to me, it makes sense that you're creating equal environments for people to come back, equal criteria. But I would like to see a challenge which perhaps is an endurance challenge because I think it'll give the female competitors a bit more of a chance. That existing challenge that we saw in the original Edge of Extinction season, I think it's very geared towards a man's victory, which for me is a little. I mean, it's frustrating and it's like too expected. Who was the first? It was Rick Devens. It was Chris Underwood, and then it was Tyson Apostle. And I think now we're ready to see that a woman come back into the game. And I would love it to be. I'd love it to be Amber. I love Amber. She's my first favorite winner. Like I wish it was Amber. I don't see it happening, but I wish it was her. I wouldn't mind seeing Nat. I like Nat very much. Also Danny, to give a big fat middle finger to the production crew of Sawa, because as we all know, Guatemala was a crazy season and has been treated like almost like dog doo-doo since. No one takes it seriously. Even in the edit this last episode, she was like, we could see she was crying about her family being there, and then there was no confessional to follow up, even in the secret scene. So I would love Danny to come back and just show people flames because she was so bad when she played this season. Oh, she was terrible.
Claudio, and your take on Edge of Extinction and who's got a good chance of coming back?
Jeez, man, I think, well, like you said, Danny's getting a terrible, terrible edit. And they're giving her the worst moments. Like she finds that other clue last week and Poverty gets the recognition for it. It's like, oh, cool, great. And then, next one, you just see her crying. You don't even see her that much of the family. Anyway, so she's...
You don't see it at all. We never know we never know who came from her family. Was it her kids? Was it her dad? We don't know. We have no idea.
It was super flattering as well. The thing is like, that's the one she got. It's like, yo, guys, come on.
Guy.
Yeah. But as for who's coming back, I think, if Tyson has more peanut butter, you can't take it away from him. But if he comes back, he's going to be the first one out again because there's no ways someone can come back twice and win it. So he's toast. But I saw a meme on Reddit where they put a thing when couples play Survivor, and I think it was in Game Changers with Jeremy, and his wife was voted out second and he won. Then there was another one, or I think Natalie's sister was voted out second and she won. And now they're saying, cool, Amber was voted out second. So maybe Rob is going to come back and win this thing. So that's an interesting thing. But I do
Rob.
I do think
let Rob win, please.
Yeah, I mean,
I would love Rob to win. Oh my God.
And he's also got a lot of haters though, which is quite interesting. There are a lot of people that aren't a Rob fan.
You know, the thing about Rob is the man has got to final 2, and was it final 3 in Redemption? I don't think so. He's gotten to the end twice, and he has entered the game every time with a pretty decent sized target on his back. And I think the way he played this time, just the way he managed to maneuver people, I'd like to see him play because I think he was kind of shortchanged. You know, had Earl, for example, been cast in the season, or Vesepia, or one of the really old school players. And I don't like the distinction between old and new school too much because I think it's arbitrary. But I do think that at moments we've seen that really come to the fore. And had Rob been cast alongside perhaps 1 or 2 older players, things would have equaled out a bit more. And I don't think he's like that culpable for the way things have turned out this game. So I'm a Rob fan. I've always loved Rob. He was like my OG favorite, and I'd like him to get back into the game for sure.
Yeah, but if we're looking at the challenges again, so it is interesting because you mentioned that, and it's so true, that the whole Edge of Extinction thing does get to a really physical challenge. So maybe it would be something that's a smaller physical section and a lot more puzzle-based sort of thing where, although I do think if it's still a physical thing, I still think Natalie's in it with a huge chance there because she's going, and she was the first one. I loved Ethan's reaction when the boat showed up and Rob's like, oh, what do you think's happening? What do you think? And it's like, or Ethan, sorry, he's like, it's bad. It's always bad. It's bad news. And then you got Natalie. She's like, bumps them out of the way. Like, no, let me have a look. And she's like, oh my gosh, guys. So she takes the lead. So from that perspective, I think she's got it there. But if I'm going to just go back to who's left in the game, and we're going to look at the different dynamics between the people. And you've got the whole Sophie and Sarah thing. Right now, I think that's the couple that's dictating what's going on in the game. And in between that, you've got the Sarah-Tony thing, right? So they're something that no one's really expecting. And then in between that, you got the Sarah, Sophie, Ben. So those are they three, nice little threesome. You got Nick is on the outside of those four. So that's already a fivesome. And then you got Michelle, who's completely on the outs, who's somewhat connected to Nick. And then you got arguably the three players that are completely on the outs, which is Kim, Denise, and Jeremy. And going back to what you were saying earlier, Mike, in terms of, Kim might be going next. You got to remember that Kim was saved this round because of Tony. Tony doesn't want Kim gone yet because he's still convinced this Lyran thing is a theory, and he doesn't want people to start looking at him. So it's interesting. I think somehow he might even start working with Kim this next episode.
I think it's a really great point. I like the way you've broken down those alliances, and I think it certainly speaks to how complex this game is, where you do have people who are in precarious positions because of that core of Sophie, Sarah, Tony. It's hard to really spot where people's alliances and allegiances lie. But I think you've actually brought up a really important point. Nick is a winner of Survivor, and Nick made some really sick moves in David vs. Goliath. He certainly was willing to just like play under the radar for a while, but he did make some really impressive moves. One of my favorite trouble counters of all time was them splitting the minority, which is insane and like a game-changing move, really. And I think that Nick understands that he's not done too much thus far to build up a kind of Survivor CV or a resume. He's got not much to show for this game so far. So perhaps he's also someone you could look to break the mold, because he might be agitated. He might be like keen to do something to add to his resume, because he's been kind of vanilla thus far. And I like Nick. He's a cool character, but I don't think he's been that much of an enjoyable character for many of the Nick fans who exist.
Yeah, I must say what I particularly liked of Nick was how he set that tribal council on fire 2 episodes ago. I mean, he ended by saying, if this is a war, this is the saddest war I've ever seen. And people were just all of a sudden, they were scrambling and there was whispering going on. It was madness. But in any case, Claudio, any closing remarks from your side?
Yeah, all I want to say is if I'm Nick right now in this situation, what I want to do is I want to take Michelle and I'll say, listen, Michelle, we can literally flip this game and we can be the ones dictating what's going on, and start bringing Kim, bringing in Denise, and bring in Jeremy, and all of a sudden you got the majority and you can take one of the others out, to Sophie or Tony or whoever, really. So that's the angle I would take, or the approach I would take. But again, this is me seeing from an outside perspective.
And Mike, now's the time we're going to call you in. What is your take now for what's to come on Winners at War?
Oh my goodness, this is a tough prediction to make, because so far I've had very little right. Not much has gone well for me in terms of predictions. I think we're going to.
You did say Adam was getting the winners edit, didn't you? I thought Adam was going to get to the end. I definitely thought Adam was going to get to the end, and I'm not going to lie, I'm very relieved that he wasn't. It was a tough edit for me to watch. I didn't enjoy it very much. I thought poor Adam was under a lot of pressure at many different moments. So I'm glad that it didn't materialize into something that was like a 9-0 drubbing or whatever. But there's a huge jury this time, 16-0. I think we're going to see Tony dominating for a little while. I think we're going to see Tony really get deep into the game. Maybe final 5, Tony will get burned out. Maybe he'll lose this fire making challenge or something like that. But Tony is in a really good spot right now, and I think it's almost like building up to a crescendo. It's not going to be like Tony's going to be ousted now without any real payoff. Something cool's going to happen. Either he's going to blow it up in a fun way, or it's going to be a really exciting rise to the top. I also think that we're going to see one of the really untainted heroic winners in a difficult scenario. So I'm talking Denise, I'm talking Kim, I'm talking Jeremy. I think those 3 are really iconic winners in my mind. Certainly they're respected very much by the Survivor fandom because of how good their wins were when they did win. I think
I don't see those three getting to the end. The final three, I'm willing to put money on. It's not going to be Denise and Kim and Jeremy. I hope. I'm not very rich, so let's just hope that doesn't happen. But I certainly think that one of those three, and if not all three of them, are going to be in a bit of a tough situation to get to the end from here.
Very valid remarks, guys. Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of TNO. I really appreciate your time and your inputs. So yeah, Mike, hopefully we'll see you again in future. It was lovely meeting you over seeing that we're in lockdown to meet you over the interwebs. But yeah, so once again, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for your time, gents. I really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of the season. And I hope that one day I can comment on your guys' performances in the Survivor SA season.
Let's hope for it.
Said you mean tweets.
I'm blocking you as of now.
Okay. Alrighty, guys. Oh shit! I forgot to hit record. Okay.
Although he probably Okay.
Just joking. Thanks for joining. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, man.